It all started when I posted a video on TikTok that I thought was just another stupid thing to do. I didn't expect it to go viral, not even for a second. I had just bought a new camera and I was experimenting with filming some random things around my apartment to test out the settings. One of the videos was of me walking through my living room with the lights flickering sporadically, the old chandelier in the corner swaying a little. The camera caught the faintest shadow darting in the background, so naturally I decided to make a quick joke about it. A ghost just entered my apartment, I guess. I captioned the video, tagging it as a paranormal challenge. I didn't expect people to believe it. Hell, I didn't believe in ghosts. But I thought it would be funny, especially considering the spooky season. But within hours, my phone started blowing up. Notifications, comments, and DMs flooded in. My video was shared thousands of times, and everyone had something to say. Some said it was a haunting, others claimed it was just bad lighting, and a few even joked about calling Ghostbusters. That's when things started getting weird. At first, it was just odd little occurrences. I'd hear things in the background while I was editing or scrolling through the comments, like faint footsteps or something tapping on the wall. Nothing concrete, but enough to get under my skin. The lights started flickering more often, especially at night. I dismissed it as just bad wiring or a faulty connection. But after a week of consistent weirdness, I began to feel unsettled. I couldn't tell if I was just paranoid because of the video or if something else was going on. It wasn't until I got a message from a random user that everything changed. The message was simple. You shouldn't have posted that. I thought it was some creepy fan trying to get attention, so I ignored it. But over the next few days, the messages didn't stop. It escalated to bizarre threats. Stop playing with things you don't understand. You can't hide from them now. At that point, I was freaked out, but still unsure if it was just some prank. I started looking into my apartment building's history, just in case. Nothing unusual came up. The building was old, but nothing mentioned ghosts or paranormal activity. However, a deep sense of dread lingered, like something wasn't right. The messages became more persistent. We know you can hear them. You shouldn't have invited it in. Then, things took a darker turn. They started referencing specific details about my life that no one online could have known. A picture of my parents that I posted on Instagram. A trip I took to the beach 2 years ago, a place I'd only mentioned once. At this point, I realized I wasn't dealing with a random troll. Someone or something was watching me. I tried to block the account, but it only came back with new usernames. And that's when the videos started showing up. It was subtle at first. A dark silhouette in the background of my posts. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then one night I went to check my Instagram feed and I froze. A new video had been posted from my account, except I hadn't posted anything. The video was taken from my living room, just like the viral one. But this time, the shadow wasn't just in the background. It was moving closer, closer and closer. And then the figure was standing in the corner, staring directly into the camera. I could feel my heart race as the video ended with a faint whisper, barely audible but chilling. "I'm coming for you." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept the lights on, pacing around my apartment, checking the locks, and even looking out the windows. I didn't know who or what was behind this, but I could feel it. Something was coming for me. I called my best friend, James, the next day. He thought I was being overly dramatic, but agreed to come over to check things out. The moment he walked in, I could see it in his eyes. The same unsettling feeling that I had been trying to ignore. His usual joking attitude disappeared as soon as he stepped into the living room. He looked at me and said, "We need to leave. Now." I was confused. Leave? What are you talking about? James was staring at something behind me. I turned around, but the room was empty. I didn't see anything unusual. That's when I heard it. A whisper, too faint to be a voice, yet it was unmistakably there. James looked at me and muttered, I'm sorry, man. This is way worse than I thought." He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door, but as we stepped into the hallway, something strange happened. The door slammed shut behind us. I tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if something was keeping us inside. That's when the lights in the hallway flickered on and off, and a sound began to fill the air. It was like a low hum, almost like a chant. My heart thumped in my chest as the air grew heavier. We tried to call for help, but our phones were dead, completely drained, even though they had been fully charged just moments before. James started to panic, but I was frozen. I could feel it, the presence getting closer, crawling up my spine, suffocating me, and then the door opened by itself. I turned to James, who was shaking uncontrollably, his face pale and wide-eyed. "Get out! Get out now!" he whispered. We both rushed out of the apartment, but as we reached the stairs, I looked back. For a split second, I thought I saw the figure in the window of my apartment, standing still, staring right at me. Its face, no, its eyes were black, empty. I felt like it could see through me. We ran out of the building without looking back. I didn't go home for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear that whisper, that chant, calling me back to the apartment. I knew I couldn't stay away forever, though. I had to go back eventually. But when I did, I found that it was no longer my apartment. The whole place had changed. The air was thick with a rancid smell, like something had been rotting in the walls. The walls themselves were covered in strange symbols, carved into the plaster like they had been there for years. But I knew they hadn't. I tried to find the camera, but it was gone. My phone had somehow been wiped clean of every single video, every single post. But there, in the corner of the living room, I found a new video, saved under my account. I clicked play. It was the same video, the one where the shadow had started approaching the camera. But this time, it wasn't just a shadow. The figure was standing in front of me, and as the camera zoomed in on its face, I saw it clearly for the first time. It was me. Or rather, it looked like me. But its eyes were hollow, black, and it was grinning. And then the last frame of the video was a simple message. Game over. I haven't posted anything online since. I don't even check social media anymore. The notifications still come in, but I don't look. The shadow, the whispers, they never stopped. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I hear the faintest knock on my door. When I open it, no one is there. And when I go back to sleep, I feel its presence again, lingering in the corner of the room, waiting for the moment it will come closer.
Next story.
I still remember the first time I saw the post. It was late one evening when I was scrolling through my social media feed, the glow from my phone illuminating the dim room. I wasn't expecting anything extraordinary, just the usual mix of memes, news, and photos from friends. But one particular post caught my attention. It wasn't anything too special at first glance, just a video. The title read, "Watch this to believe it." Curiosity piqued. I clicked on it. The video started with a shaky, handheld shot of a dark, empty house. The sound was muffled, and there was no real narrative to it. The person filming, who I assume was the owner, was breathing heavily, moving down a narrow hallway. I could tell from the dim lighting and the creaking floorboards that the place was old, maybe even abandoned. The man behind the camera whispered something like, "This is where it all started." Then the camera jerked abruptly, and a low, guttural sound echoed through the house. A shadow flickered across the screen, something that looked like a figure moving in the corner of a doorway. The man cursed under his breath and moved closer. I'll admit, my heart skipped a beat. I've seen my share of ghost videos, but this one felt different. There was something unnerving about it. As the camera panned, I saw what appeared to be a photograph on the wall. It was too blurry to make out at first, but when the man zoomed in, my blood ran cold. It was a photo of a woman pale and gaunt with hollow eyes staring back at me. The caption on the photo was in faded ink, "Always watching." The video abruptly cut off. The screen went black. A chill ran down my spine as I stared at my phone. I thought about it for days. The haunting image of that woman stayed with me. But I didn't tell anyone. I assumed it was just a well-done ghost story, a piece of fiction meant to get a rise out of people. A week passed. I started noticing something strange. Late at night, when I would check my social media, the same video would appear again and again, popping up on my feed, each time with a new caption, something like, "Do you dare watch it?" or "This is the true horror behind the viral video." It was like the video was following me. The more I saw it, the more it felt real. I began to wonder if something dark was connected to that post, something that no one had explained. What if it wasn't just a video? What if it was a warning? That's when I decided to investigate. I contacted the person who had posted the video, or at least I tried to. They didn't respond at first, but after a few days, I received a cryptic message from an account with a username I didn't recognize. The message was simple, just a location and a time. Meet me at 4th and Oak, midnight, if you want the truth. I wasn't sure what to do, but something told me I needed to go. Maybe I was just curious, maybe I was stupid, but there was no turning back now. I showed up that night, my phone gripped tightly in my hand, the cold air biting at my skin. 4th and Oak was a quiet, dark intersection. It was near an old, crumbling building, the kind that had been abandoned for years. I stood there in silence, waiting, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Then I saw the figure. A man tall with a hooded jacket stepped out from the shadows. He walked toward me slowly, deliberately. When he reached me, he didn't speak at first. Instead, he handed me an old, cracked phone, the same one from the video. The screen flickered as he passed it to me. "Watch it," he said, his voice low and grave. I took the phone, my hands shaking. As soon as I unlocked it, I saw the same video. But this time, something was different. There was no shaky camera, no whispered voice. It was clear, as if it had been filmed just for me. The same house, the same woman in the photograph. But this time, the woman moved. She blinked. I gasped and almost dropped the phone. The figure in the video stepped forward and whispered something I couldn't understand, and then she stared directly at the camera. Her hollow eyes seemed to pierce through me. I looked up, my pulse racing. The man who had handed me the phone was gone. The street was silent, empty. Only the faint sound of wind rustling through the trees remained. I turned and ran, not looking back. I couldn't explain it, but the next few days were a blur of unease. That video kept haunting me. I would hear whispers at night, see flickers of movement in the corners of my vision. The woman from the photo, she was following me. I started seeing her face in reflections on windows in the screen of my phone. Every time I turned it on, her eyes were there, staring at me. The worst part was when I started receiving messages. I didn't know who was sending them. At first, they were innocuous. Simple things like, "You are being watched," or "You shouldn't have looked." But as time went on, the messages became more specific, more personal. They knew things about my life that no one could have known. "Your brother is coming home soon." I froze when I read that. My brother had been away on a trip for months. How could anyone know that? The next night, I got a call. The voice on the other end was distorted, like they were speaking through a broken speaker. It sounded almost like a whisper, but not quite. "You can't escape her," the voice said. "She'll find you, just like she found us." I hung up, my heart racing. But then, as I sat there in my living room, I noticed something. My phone was on the table in front of me, but it was glowing. I had it turned off. I reached for it, but as soon as I touched it, it turned on by itself. The screen flashed, and then there it was. The same photo of the woman. The caption had changed. "She's in your house now." I screamed and ran to check every room. There was nothing there. Nothing except the eerie silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The woman's eyes were always there, just out of sight, peering at me from behind corners, from windows, from the edges of my vision. The following week, I found out about the original poster of the video. His name was Daniel, and he was the one who'd posted the original viral clip. But when I tried to find more information about him, the search results led me to something horrifying. There was a news article from a few years ago about a man named Daniel who had gone missing. He'd been staying at a house that sounded eerily similar to the one in the video. He had been researching paranormal phenomena, trying to capture the ultimate ghost footage for his social media channel. But according to the article, something went wrong. He had disappeared without a trace, leaving only his phone behind. The article ended with a chilling line. Daniel's last post was a video of the woman with no explanation of what happened to him afterward. I began to piece it together. The woman in the video wasn't just some random ghost. She was something far worse. She wasn't bound by the rules of the physical world, and she was tied to that video, to that phone, to the internet itself. She was a part of the viral post. I tried to delete the video from my feed, but it didn't work. It kept reappearing every time I thought I had gotten rid of it. The more I tried to escape, the more the woman tormented me. She haunted my dreams, followed me on social media, and even appeared in photos that I hadn't taken. I felt like I was going insane. The last straw came one night when I looked into my bathroom mirror. There, standing behind me, was her reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, her fingers reaching out to touch me. Before I could react, the reflection was gone. I turned around and my phone buzzed. The message was from an unknown number. It simply read, "Sure, you're next."
Next story.
I'll never forget that night, the one that changed everything. I still get chills just thinking about it. It all started with a simple post on social media. You know the kind, the ones that get shared around with an eerie caption or a chilling photo. It was like any other post, a random collection of creepy things to stir your curiosity. Except this one was different. It all started when I was scrolling through my feed one evening after a long day at work. I was exhausted, trying to unwind, and like everyone else, I mindlessly scrolled through Instagram, Facebook, whatever app I had open. That's when I saw it. It was a picture of an old abandoned house. The house was decaying, windows shattered, a lone light flickering inside. The post had a caption, "Someone stayed here. They never left." At first, it didn't seem like much, just one of those creepy posts you see around Halloween, you know? But then something caught my eye. Beneath the photo, there was a comment. It was a simple message, just a string of numbers and letters that seemed like gibberish. But there was something about it. It was weird, almost as if it was a code. My curiosity got the best of me, and I copied it. The next few hours were spent researching that random string of characters. It was late, and I should have been in bed, but I couldn't stop. The more I searched, the stranger the results became. The code wasn't just random letters. It led to other photos, other places, each one more disturbing than the last. I felt like I was chasing a trail, pulling me deeper into something I couldn't quite understand. I should have stopped, but I didn't. I kept following it. And that's when I found the video. It was hidden on an obscure page, one that didn't have many followers, just a single video with no description. I clicked on it. It was a grainy clip taken from a shaky phone camera. A man stood in the middle of what looked like the same abandoned house from the picture. His face was distorted by shadows, but his eyes were wide open, unnaturally so. He looked directly into the camera as if he could see me through the screen, as if he was standing right next to me. Then the camera jerked, and I saw it. In the corner of the room behind him was someone. A figure, tall and hunched, dressed in what looked like a tattered black robe. I couldn't make out its face, but there was no mistaking the shape. It wasn't human. The figure raised a hand as if beckoning him forward, and then the camera went black. The video ended. I sat there frozen, staring at my screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I could barely breathe. What was that thing? Why was it in the video? Who was that man? I tried to shake it off, to tell myself it was just some fake video, some elaborate prank. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. And then I saw it, a comment under the video. "Don't follow the code, it's already too late." It was from the same account that had posted the photo. My heart skipped a beat. What did that mean? Had someone else gone down the same rabbit hole I had? I felt a chill run down my spine, and for the first time I started to feel genuinely scared. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a notification, but not from any of my usual apps. It was from an app I didn't even recognize. The message read, "You're next." I tried to dismiss it, but the phone wouldn't let me. It wouldn't stop buzzing. It felt like something was watching me. I was being drawn into this thing, deeper and deeper. I thought about deleting the app, logging off, but the nagging thought in the back of my mind wouldn't let me. I had to know what was going on. I didn't sleep that night. I kept scrolling through my phone, going deeper into the posts, the comments, the videos. But each time I did, things started to change. The posts started to look different, darker, more twisted. The figures in the pictures seemed to stare right back at me. The faces blurred, contorted in ways that were too unnatural to be real. And then I saw something that made me drop my phone. It was a picture of my own bedroom. The caption read, "It's almost time." I didn't know what to think. How? How could someone have taken that picture? I grabbed my phone, dialed my best friend, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I texted my mom, no reply. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare and no one was around to help me. I glanced out of my window, but there was nothing there. Nothing I could see. Yet the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. That night, I didn't dare go to sleep. I kept the lights on, Checked every corner of my apartment, but nothing seemed out of place. The phone continued to buzz, nonstop. The messages got worse. You can't escape. It's already too late. And then at 3 a.m., it came. A new video. I didn't want to watch it. I knew I shouldn't, but I clicked it anyway. This time it was different. The video opened with the same abandoned house from the previous posts, but now it was inside. It was as though I was there, standing in that dark, decaying room. The camera slowly panned to a corner, and that same figure was there, only this time it was closer. The hooded thing had no face, just blackness where its face should have been. And then it stepped forward, walking right into the frame. It was in my room. The figure, moving unnaturally fast, was there, in my home, in my own space. It stood right behind me, and the camera, which was now aimed at me, caught my face in the reflection. My eyes were wide, panicked, but something was off. It wasn't me. The reflection of me wasn't me. It was someone else, someone I didn't recognize. A man, with dark eyes staring at me from the reflection. I could barely breathe as I realized with horror that the figure was moving closer. Suddenly, the phone cut off. The app deleted itself from my phone. I checked my gallery, the videos, the photos, everything was gone. But that feeling, the one that's so hard to explain, lingered. I knew something was out there. Something was following me. And it wasn't just a creepy post anymore. It was real. The next morning, things only got worse. The atmosphere was thick with dread, like the air itself was watching me. I saw more posts, more pictures, more videos, all with one common theme. The figure, always in the background, always watching. I didn't know who was behind this, but I couldn't escape it. I felt like I was stuck in a loop, forever haunted by that thing. To this day, I still don't know how it all happened. I don't know how that post ended up in my feed, how that video ended up on my phone. I've tried to tell people, tried to warn them, but no one believes me. They say it's just a hoax, a prank, a viral marketing campaign, but deep down, I know it's real. I know I'm being watched, and I know someday it'll come for me.
Next story.
I've always been the skeptical type, the kind of person who dismisses ghost stories and online horror challenges as nothing more than elaborate hoaxes. But this changed everything. It started innocently enough. I was scrolling through my feed on a lazy Sunday afternoon, doing my usual mindless browsing. That's when I saw it, one of those viral posts that pop up every now and then, claiming to be a true story. This one was different, though. It was titled, "The Game You Should Never Play." I didn't think much of it at first, but the comments caught my attention. They were filled with people warning others to stay away. Some mentioned they'd played the game, and their experiences were unsettling, to say the least. A few claimed that they had seen things, heard things. Some had even stopped using their phones after it because the game followed them. Naturally, I was intrigued. I'm not one to back down from a challenge, and this seemed like just another internet urban legend. I clicked on the link. It led to a forum thread, which only made the whole thing seem more mysterious. The post was brief and simple. There is a game. It starts with an invitation. If you accept, it will change your life forever. You will regret it. If you play, you might never leave. The rules were vague. The instructions simply stated that the game could be played on any device, and that the first step was to send a message to a specific contact listed on the thread. The contact was just a random username, a string of numbers and letters, with no profile picture or real name attached. The instructions mentioned that the message must say, "I'm ready to play." At this point, I started to get a little wary, but my curiosity got the better of me. After all, it was just a game, right? How bad could it be? I copied the contact name and sent the message, "I'm ready to play." Nothing happened at first. The screen just sat there, waiting for a response. Then a notification popped up. It was from the mysterious user. The message was simple: "The game begins now." I wasn't sure what to expect, but I figured I'd follow the instructions. A new prompt appeared on my screen. Step 1, look outside your window. I thought it was a little weird, but I did it anyway. I glanced out the window to my street below. Nothing unusual. The sun was starting to set, and everything seemed calm. No creepy figures or ominous shadows, just a regular suburban neighborhood. I went back to my phone and waited. Another message appeared. Step 2, close your eyes for 1 minute. Don't open them until the timer ends. I hesitated. It sounded strange, but again, nothing that terrifying. I set a timer for a minute and closed my eyes. I could hear the hum of my phone in my hands, but I didn't dare open my eyes. When the timer went off, I opened them, and the first thing I saw was the text message on my screen. Step 3. Go to the mirror and take a photo of yourself. I was getting a little uneasy now, but I went along with it. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and stood in front of the mirror. I wasn't sure why I had to take a photo of myself, but I did anyway. As I raised my phone, I couldn't help but notice that my reflection was a little off. I didn't see anything immediately alarming, no sudden movements or strange shadows, but there was something wrong. It was as though the reflection was too still, like it was waiting for something. I snapped the photo, my hands trembling slightly. When I looked back at my phone, the message had already changed. Step 4, open the photo you just took. I did. The photo of me standing in front of the mirror was still there, but there was something different about it. My reflection wasn't exactly the same. My eyes, which had been a normal brown, now appeared black, completely dark, like empty voids. My mouth seemed to stretch unnaturally wide, as though I were grinning. I stared at the photo, feeling a rising panic. There was no way this was real. Maybe it was some sort of app or filter, right? But I hadn't applied anything. It had just been a regular photo, the kind you'd take without thinking. I tried to delete the image, but my phone wouldn't let me. The delete button was grayed out, unresponsive. I tapped my phone again, trying to make sense of what was happening, but then the screen flickered. Step 5, leave your house. Don't look back. My heart was pounding now. I wasn't sure what was going on, but it felt wrong. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the screen. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, and my stomach felt like it was twisting itself into knots. But I knew that if I didn't follow the instructions, the game might just continue, and I wasn't sure how much further I wanted to go. I left my house. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my skin. The street was eerily quiet. The sound of crickets chirped in the distance, but other than that, nothing. It felt like I was in a dream, like time had slowed down. I didn't look back, just like the message had told me. As I walked down the sidewalk, my phone buzzed again. Step 6, turn around. I stopped dead in my tracks. I knew what I had to do, but a part of me didn't want to. The fear bubbling in my chest made my throat dry. My mind screamed at me not to turn, to keep walking, to run. But the game had already gone too far. I slowly turned around. At first, I saw nothing. The street was still empty, no one in sight, just the streetlights casting long, eerie shadows. And then I saw her. She was standing at the far end of the street, just outside the glow of a street lamp. A woman in a long, dark dress, her face hidden under a veil. She was unmoving, just standing there, watching me. I froze. My phone buzzed again. The message read, Step 7, approach her. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to turn away, to get back inside, but my body didn't obey. The game had control now. I walked toward her, my steps slow and hesitant. As I got closer, I could hear her breathing soft and shallow, like she was waiting for me to say something. My throat was dry, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. When I was just a few feet away, she lifted her head, and I saw her face. It wasn't human. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, those eyes were dark voids, just like the ones in my reflection. Her mouth was twisted into a grotesque grin, just like mine had been in the photo. I stepped back, my legs shaking. But before I could run, the phone buzzed once more. Step 8, it's too late. The woman reached out toward me, her hand cold as ice. I tried to back away, but I couldn't move. It was like my feet were glued to the ground. Then everything went black. I woke up the next morning in my bed, drenched in sweat. My phone was lying on the nightstand. The screen cracked. The game was over, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were black.
Next story.
I never thought I'd get caught up in something like this. At the time, I just thought it was a typical social media challenge, one of those trends that everyone gets sucked into. But now, looking back, I can't help but wonder if I ever truly had a choice. It all started when I saw a post on Instagram. It was one of those viral, scary challenges where people dared each other to go to specific haunted locations, film it, and then post the video with a creepy hashtag. The post I saw had a picture of a forest near my hometown. Nothing too unusual about that. It was an eerie, overgrown spot that had a bit of local folklore attached to it. People had gone in there and claimed to hear voices or see strange things, but I always thought it was just an exaggeration. I figured I'd do the challenge, just go in, film, and share the video. It would be fun. A little creepy, but nothing I couldn't handle. I wasn't expecting to get so many views. The post went viral. Everyone loved it. The views and comments kept coming in, and the more people watched, the more intense things got. But the views weren't the only thing that increased. So did the strange occurrences. It started small. I would hear tapping at my window at night, but when I went to check, there was nothing there. I convinced myself it was just the wind or the trees brushing against the glass. Then came the strange messages, comments on my posts that weren't from anyone I knew, messages from random users that were just a string of symbols, things like or 1001. It didn't make sense, but I didn't think much of it at first. Then came the dreams. I'll never forget the first one. It was a cold night, and I woke up in the middle of a dream where I was back in that forest. It was dark, far darker than I remembered, and the trees seemed to loom over me like they were alive. The air was thick, and the ground was soft beneath my feet as if I was walking through mud. But the strangest part? I wasn't alone. Someone was walking beside me. I could hear their footsteps, but I couldn't see them. I tried to turn to look, but no matter how fast I spun around, I couldn't catch a glimpse of whoever was with me. Then the voice came. "Why did you do it?" It was a low whisper, almost like it was coming from the wind itself. I froze in fear, feeling a chill run down my spine. I couldn't answer. I didn't know how. The voice came again, louder this time. "Why did you bring me here?" And just like that, I woke up, sweating, heart racing. I looked around my room, but everything was normal, nothing out of place. I tried to tell myself it was just a bad dream, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The nightmares kept coming, each one more vivid and unsettling than the last. And each time the voice got clearer, more insistent. It was demanding to know why I had gone into the forest, why I had filmed it, why I had posted it, as if someone was angry with me for revealing it to the world. I tried to distance myself from the forest. I stopped going out there, but the problem was I couldn't stop thinking about it. The nightmares wouldn't let me. They were relentless, and every time I closed my eyes, I could hear that whisper. I could feel its presence, just behind me, just out of sight. And then it happened. The one thing that made me realize how deep I was into something I couldn't escape from. One night, I received a direct message on Instagram. It was from a user I didn't recognize. Someone with no profile picture and a username that was just a series of random letters and numbers. The message was simple: "You shouldn't have posted that." I froze. I had no idea how they could have known about my post, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just some creepy troll, until I checked the account again. It wasn't just a message. There were images, several of them, pictures of the forest, and in each one there was something, or rather, someone lurking in the shadows. In one photo, I could just make out the outline of a person standing between the trees. Another showed a figure walking toward me, but in the distance, blurry and hard to focus on. I tried to block the account, but the messages didn't stop. They kept coming, and each one was more disturbing than the last. And then, one night, I got a video message. It was a clip from my original post, the one where I was filming in the forest, walking down that overgrown path. But this time something was different. In the video, I was still walking, but as I passed a large tree, I caught a glimpse of something, a figure standing at the edge of the frame. At first, I thought it was just my imagination or a trick of the camera, but then, in the next frame, the figure was closer. It was like the person was moving toward me, inch by inch, but they were barely visible, like a shadow hiding just out of reach. I felt my blood run cold. That thing wasn't in the original video. I didn't know what to do. I tried to erase everything. I deleted the post. I deleted the messages. I blocked every account I could think of. But it was like trying to outrun a storm. No matter how far I went, it followed me. The worst part? The dreams didn't stop. In fact, they only got worse. Each time I woke up, I was more exhausted, more terrified. The whispering had grown louder. Every night, I would wake up in a cold sweat, feeling like someone was standing in my room just behind me. And then one morning, I woke up to something that I will never forget. There on my bathroom mirror was a message, written in what looked like wet, dripping ink. You brought me here. I froze. My heart stopped. There, in the reflection, behind me, standing just at the door of the bathroom, was a figure. It was blurry, almost translucent, but I could feel it. I could feel its presence like a weight pressing down on me. And the worst part, I wasn't alone in that room anymore. I didn't know how it got there or what it wanted, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't get away. The challenge, the post, the video, it had all been a gateway. Something had crossed over when I shared it. Something had been unleashed. That's when I realized some things shouldn't be filmed. Some things shouldn't be shared. Because once you do, they can't go back. And now I can feel it, always lurking, always watching, always waiting for the next time I slip up. I'm still not sure if it was a ghost, a demon, or something worse, but I know this, it's still here. I don't use social media anymore, I don't go outside, and I don't sleep, not because I don't want to, but because I can't. It knows when I'm awake, it knows when I'm asleep, and it's coming for me.
Next story.
It was supposed to be a quick getaway, just me and a couple of friends escaping the city for a weekend in the mountains. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just peace and quiet. We'd rented a cabin in the woods, one of those rustic places far enough out of the way to make you feel like you were completely cut off from the world. The drive up there had been long, and the last stretch of road was just winding curves and towering trees. It was already getting dark by the time we arrived. The cabin was exactly what we had expected. Cozy, isolated, with a perfect view of the valley below. We were all excited to just relax, maybe do a little hiking, and enjoy the simple life for a few days. That night, after unpacking, we lit a fire in the fireplace, opened some drinks, and talked late into the night. The silence outside was a bit unsettling, but it was kind of peaceful too. There were no sounds of cars or distant neighbors. It was just us, the fire, and the occasional rustle of wind outside. Around midnight, my friend Ethan brought up something we all laughed about, an urban legend he'd heard about an old, abandoned house deep in the forest nearby. It was a place that people said you should never visit, a house with a dark history of strange disappearances and sightings of people who'd gone in but never came out. It was a joke at first, a scary story to get the mood going, but as the night wore on, the idea started to sound more and more intriguing. "I bet it's just some old house someone abandoned years ago," said Jen, another friend of ours, sipping her drink. "Probably nothing but old furniture and a couple of raccoons." But then, Ethan made a challenge. He dared us to go look for it. "You guys are all too scared, huh? No one's brave enough to go check it out?" At first, we all brushed it off. It was too late, and none of us were keen on traipsing through the woods at night. But Ethan wouldn't let it go. He started making more daring comments, poking fun at how we were too scared to find a haunted house. After a while, it became more of a challenge than anything else. "I'll do it," I said finally, not wanting to be the only one backing out. "I'll go check it out, but I'm not going alone." The others reluctantly agreed to come with me. We grabbed flashlights and headed outside, the cold night air biting at our skin. The forest around us was dense, and the path, barely a trail, was overgrown with vines and brambles. We walked for what felt like an hour, the darkness around us feeling thicker with every step. The wind had picked up, and the rustling of the trees above added a strange, unsettling layer to the night. "Maybe we should turn back," Jen said, her voice trembling slightly. "This is kind of creepy, don't you think?" But Ethan pressed on, urging us forward. "It's just an old house. Nothing to worry about." We eventually stumbled upon it. At first, I thought it was just another abandoned shed, but when we stepped closer, we saw that it was an actual house. Old, dilapidated, and clearly forgotten by time. The windows were boarded up and the front door hung off its hinges, creaking in the wind. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. There was a chill in the air, and the shadows seemed to deepen around us as we stood in front of the house, unsure of what to do next. "I think we should go back," Jen said again, her voice more insistent this time. "This place gives me the creeps." But again, Ethan pushed us forward. "No turning back now. Let's just go inside and look around." We hesitated, but then Ethan pushed the door open, and it groaned in protest. I think we all knew it was a bad idea, but there was something about the house that pulled us in. The air inside was musty, thick with the smell of mold and dust. The wooden floors creaked under our feet as we moved through the abandoned rooms. each one more decayed than the last. We explored the house for what felt like hours, moving from room to room. Everything was covered in dust, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. There was a strange feeling here, a heaviness in the air, like we were being watched, but no one could pinpoint exactly what was wrong. Ethan was the first to find something odd, a small, worn journal tucked inside a drawer in the kitchen. He flipped through it, his face slowly paling. "Guys, this is weird," he said, his voice low. These are like personal notes. Some of them are from like the 1970s. We crowded around, and I felt a shiver run down my spine as I read the notes. The journal was filled with accounts of strange occurrences, footsteps when no one was around, whispers at night, things that moved when no one was looking. The entries became increasingly frantic, as if the person who had written them was slowly losing their mind. The last entry read, "I can hear them now. They're here. They won't leave until they have me." At that moment, I heard something. Something faint, almost like a scratching noise coming from the walls. It was low, almost imperceptible, but enough to make my skin crawl. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Jen's eyes went wide. "We need to leave. Now." But before we could make a move, the house seemed to shift. The temperature dropped suddenly, and the wind outside howled like something in pain. We turned to leave, but the front door slammed shut, trapping us inside. Panic set in. We rushed to the windows, but they were all sealed shut, as if the house was refusing to let us go. The scratching noise grew louder, now accompanied by whispers, distant voices calling our names. And then we saw it, a figure standing in the doorway of the kitchen. At first, it was just a silhouette, but as it stepped closer, we saw its face. Pale, hollow eyes, a twisted grin stretching across its face. It was a man, but not a man. His skin was stretched too thin, his body unnaturally tall, and he had a presence that made the air feel thick, suffocating. We froze, unable to move, as the figure stepped toward us, its footsteps unnervingly silent. "Run," Ethan whispered. "Run now." We turned and bolted for the back door, throwing it open with all our strength. The forest was pitch black, but we didn't care. We ran, not looking back, not daring to stop until we reached the cabin. When we got back, out of breath and terrified, we locked all the doors and windows. The night was still, unnervingly quiet, but we all knew something had followed us back. Every time I close my eyes, I can still hear the whispers, feel the scratching noise, the sensation of being watched. And sometimes, just as I'm about to fall asleep, I swear I can hear footsteps moving closer, getting louder. We never went back to that house, and we never will.
Next story.
I should have known better than to trust it. I should have listened to the warnings. But I was bored, curious, and honestly, a little desperate for some excitement. I had heard about the haunted app that was making its rounds on social media. People were posting screenshots of strange interactions, cryptic messages, and the eerie things that began happening after downloading it. The app was called Vesper, and from what I could tell, it was a simple messaging app, nothing too out of the ordinary. It wasn't available in the App Store, which was odd, but people were sharing download links, saying it was a private beta or some sort of exclusive access. A few said they had seen the app being advertised in strange, almost cryptic ways. Flashes of the app's logo in random YouTube videos, screenshots shared in the middle of threads, as if it were popping up when least expected. Most of the posts were just people talking about how they regretted downloading it. Some claimed their phones started malfunctioning, or worse, that they began receiving unsettling messages from strangers. A few posts even mentioned hearing whispers or seeing shadows in the background of their photos. But I didn't believe it. It was just another viral horror trend, right? One night, after another uneventful evening of scrolling through social media, I found myself staring at one of those posts again. "Don't download Vesper." I sighed, feeling a little more annoyed than concerned. It had popped up everywhere lately, and I figured it would be just like the others, another internet hoax. I clicked on the link. It led me to a website that didn't look quite right. The text was small and blurry, almost as though it had been hastily put together. Still, there was the Down Now button. My thumb hovered over it for a moment before I tapped it. The app downloaded faster than I expected. A few seconds later, I found the Vesper icon sitting on my home screen. I stared at it for a moment. There was no turning back now. I opened the app. The screen was blank at first, just a simple black background with the logo in the center. I stared at it, waiting for something to happen. After a few seconds, the screen flickered and a message appeared. Hello. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't type anything. No one else was using my phone. I quickly closed the app, my hands trembling, but when I reopened it, the message was still there. Hello, I'm here. A chill ran down my spine, but I tried to rationalize it. It was a glitch, I told myself. Just some weird app behavior. But the message stayed on the screen as if it were waiting for me to respond. My phone buzzed with a notification from Vesper. Are you ready to play? I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. I was seconds away from deleting the app, but my curiosity got the better of me. I typed a single word, play. The app responded almost immediately. Step 1, look at the clock. It was 12:15 a.m. A strange sense of unease washed over me. The app was talking to me like it knew things. I dismissed it, trying to laugh it off. I looked at the clock. Step 2, close your eyes. I froze. It was strange. I thought this was just some poorly made game. Still, I closed my eyes. The app had a strange power over me, like it was guiding me, pulling me into whatever this was. I sat in the darkness, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. For some reason, I couldn't open my eyes. It wasn't a conscious decision. It felt more like the app was demanding it. The phone buzzed again. Step 3, open your eyes, but don't move. When I opened them, everything looked the same. My room, my bed, the soft light of the street lamps filtering through my curtains. But something felt off. The shadows seemed deeper. My surroundings felt more oppressive. I glanced at the screen. Step 4, look at the reflection. I froze. There was no mirror in my room. But then my gaze flicked toward the window. The reflection of the street outside appeared in the glass, a distorted, hazy version of my own room. That's when I saw it. A figure. It was standing at the edge of my window, just beyond the glass. It was tall, dark, and too still. Its features were obscured by the shadows, but its presence was unmistakable. I froze. My blood ran cold. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching. Step 5. Say goodbye. I looked at my phone. My breath caught in my throat. There was no way I was going to say goodbye to anything. This was insane. I wanted to delete the app, to turn off my phone, to throw it out the window, but I couldn't. Before I could even decide what to do next, the app buzzed again. Step 6, turn around. I froze. There was no way, but my body didn't respond to my commands. It was like I was trapped in the app, forced to obey its every instruction. Slowly, reluctantly, I turned around. Nothing. I sighed in relief, my body trembling with nervous energy. I glanced back at the window. The figure was gone. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. But before I could make sense of what had just happened, the phone buzzed again. The message read, Step 7, look behind you. I froze. My heart stopped. I couldn't move. I knew what I would see, but I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't stop following the game's instructions. I slowly turned my head. The figure was standing in the doorway, inches away from me. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were dark voids. Its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, its face twisted in a silent scream. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but my body was paralyzed, unable to move. The app buzzed again. Step 8, you've played too long, you can't leave. I wanted to tear my phone apart, to throw it out of the window, to do anything to escape, but the figure was still there, its presence suffocating the air around me. The screen flashed once more. You shouldn't have played. Now, you belong to Vesper. A dark laugh echoed in my ears, as if coming from the app itself. The figure leaned closer, its face pressing against mine, its cold breath brushing against my skin. And then, the screen went black. I woke up the next morning with my phone beside me, lying face down on my bed. The app was gone. But the feeling remained. Something was still watching me. I could feel it, like a weight pressing down on my chest. My reflection was no longer just in the mirror. It followed me. And no matter what I did, the app's messages would keep coming. You can't escape me.
Next story.
It started as a joke, or at least that's how I tried to convince myself. A late-night scroll through Twitter, some random thread about creepy stories that had gone viral. You've probably seen them, the threads where people share their most unsettling experiences with photos or videos, all to entertain or maybe get a few retweets. But I should have stopped when I saw the post that caught my eye. It was a simple tweet, just a photo of an old, worn-out key. The caption said, "Found this key in a thrift store, thought it was cool. Turns out it's been passed down through generations. Anyone know where it leads?" At first, I laughed. A key? What was so special about that? But something about it intrigued me. Maybe it was the way the key looked, old and rusted with a peculiar symbol etched into it. Maybe it was the fact that the post had gone viral with thousands of comments, everyone wondering about the key's origin. I couldn't resist. I clicked on the user's profile to see if there was more about the key, but there was nothing. No other photos, no replies, just that one tweet. That's when I made the mistake. I didn't think twice. I replied, "I'll buy it from you if you're serious. DM me." For hours, I waited. Nothing. I almost forgot about it, chalking it up to a prank, until my phone buzzed late that night. A direct message. The user had sent me a single photo, a blurry picture of the same key, but this time it was resting on an old wooden table. The photo had a strange, almost ethereal glow around the edges. It was unsettling, but I couldn't explain why. The message beneath it read, "Meet me at the old mill, 2 a.m. If you're still curious, bring $50. I should have stopped there, right? But curiosity got the better of me. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed my coat, my phone, and walked out the door. The old mill was a notorious spot in our town. Most people didn't go there after dark. Rumors about it being haunted, strange occurrences, the usual spooky stuff. But I figured, what harm could it do? It was just a key. When I arrived at the mill, the place was quiet, eerily so. The moonlight cast long shadows on the overgrown grass, and the air was thick with the smell of rust and old wood. There was no sign of the person I was supposed to meet. I waited, checking my watch. It was well past 2 a.m. now. Maybe I had been pranked after all. Just as I was about to leave, I heard a sound, a soft creaking, like something was moving inside the mill. My heart started to race. I stepped closer to the door, the old wood groaning beneath my feet. That's when I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the mill's door. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then it stepped forward. It was a man, but something was wrong. He was tall, too tall. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were wide and dark, unnaturally so. He wore a long, tattered coat that billowed around his feet as if caught in a wind that didn't exist. I froze, unable to speak, unable to move. The man reached into his coat and pulled out the key. Without a word, he tossed it onto the ground in front of me, and then, just as quickly as he had appeared, he was gone, disappeared into the night, leaving behind only a lingering coldness. I don't know what came over me, but I picked up the key. It was heavier than I had imagined, and I could feel a strange energy pulsing through it, like it was alive. I couldn't explain it, but something in my gut told me this was no ordinary key. I rushed home, the weight of it in my pocket making every step feel heavier. The key was burning a hole in my thoughts. What did it unlock? Why had that man given it to me? When I got home, I placed it on my desk, staring at it for hours. The symbol on the key was familiar, but I couldn't place it. It looked like an ancient language, something long forgotten. I pulled out my laptop, searching for any connection. That's when I found it. A forum thread from years ago, buried deep on a dark web page. It was a thread about cursed objects that were said to hold supernatural power. The key was mentioned, along with a description of its origins. The key was said to be passed down through generations, its purpose never truly understood. Each time it was used, it unlocked something that was never meant to be opened. I shuddered, closing my laptop. I should have stopped there, but I couldn't. I needed to know. The curiosity, the dread, it was all-consuming. The next day, I decided to test it. I had an old box in my basement, one that I had inherited from my grandfather. It had been locked for as long as I could remember, but no one had the key. I had never bothered to open it. Maybe now was the time. I made my way to the basement, the key heavy in my hand. I inserted it into the lock. It fit perfectly. A faint clicking sound echoed through the quiet basement. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid of the box. What I found inside was not what I expected. It was a stack of old papers, maps, drawings, and photographs. Some were so faded that they were barely legible, but one stood out. It was a photograph of a man, or what used to be a man. His face was contorted, his eyes wide and full of terror, as if he had seen something unimaginable. Beneath the photograph was a note, written in a language I didn't understand. but somehow I could feel the meaning of it in my bones. The note was simple. The key has a master, and its hunger is endless. That's when it hit me. The key wasn't just an object. It was a conduit, a way for something to enter this world, and the man I had met at the mill, he wasn't human. He was something that had been waiting for the key to return. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The knowledge gnawed at me, clawing at my mind, refusing to let go. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the sound. Around 3 a.m., I heard it. A soft tapping like something or someone was knocking on my door. I wasn't about to open it. I couldn't. But the knocking didn't stop. It persisted, growing louder until it sounded more like banging, slamming against the door. I backed away slowly, my heart racing. I grabbed the key, feeling its weight in my hand once more. The banging stopped suddenly, and the house was quiet. Too quiet. I stood frozen in place, staring at the door. Then I heard a voice, soft, whispering through the crack in the door. "You shouldn't have opened it." The voice was cold, and it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the room.
Next story.
It started like any other evening, scrolling mindlessly through my feed. The usual distractions, news stories, memes, and random videos flooded my screen. But then something stood out. It wasn't a meme or a funny video. It was a post that simply said, "Don't open the link, trust me." Now I know what you're thinking. It's just a prank. Don't click it. And I thought the same at first, but something about it felt different. The way the message was phrased made me feel like it was meant for me. I hesitated, and that's when I saw the comment. A reply from someone I recognized. It was from my best friend, Katie. The message was simple. "Please don't open it. You won't be the same if you do." I felt my heart rate quicken. Katie didn't mess around. She wasn't one for jokes, especially ones that involved cryptic messages. I immediately texted her, asking what she meant. She didn't reply. I stared at the screen, trying to decide what to do. The post was gaining traction. Hundreds of comments, likes, and shares. It had gone viral, and the thread was quickly filling up with people warning others not to open the link. Some said they did, and they regretted it. Others mentioned strange things that had happened to them after clicking. It was odd. I've seen my fair share of viral challenges, creepy YouTube videos, and weird internet rumors, but this felt different. Something about it gnawed at me. Finally, after an hour of staring at the screen, I clicked it. The link opened to a black screen with a single phrase in bold white letters, "You shouldn't have clicked." Before I could even process what I was looking at, the screen flashed. It was only for a second, but it felt like a jolt straight to my spine. When it faded, I saw something that shouldn't have been there. A reflection. At first, I thought it was just a glitch, a trick of my eyes. But no, the reflection was there, clear as day. A person, a woman, standing behind me. I froze. There was no one in my room. I was alone. I turned around, my heart hammering in my chest. The room was empty, as it should be. But when I turned back to my phone, the reflection was still there. It wasn't just the woman, though. It was her eyes. They were staring directly at me. And I swear I could see a flicker of movement, like she was starting to step closer to the phone screen. I slammed the phone down, gasping for breath. My hands were trembling, and my head felt like it was spinning. I needed to shake this off, tell myself it was just some sort of weird illusion, but my gut told me something was terribly wrong. The next morning, I thought about deleting the link, clearing the post, pretending like it never happened. But when I checked my feed, the post was still there, and now there was a message under it, directed at me. It read, "You've opened the door, now you can't close it." Panic set in. This was real. Something was happening. I tried to block the account, report the post, even delete it from my history. But nothing worked. It was everywhere, popping up in my notifications, my feed, even in messages I hadn't opened yet. Days passed. I couldn't escape it. The woman in the reflection kept appearing in every photo I took, every video I watched. Sometimes she was just in the background, a blurry figure standing behind me. Other times, her face was clear as day, staring at me through the screen. I tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. It was like she was following me, like she knew where I was at all times. I called Katie again, but she didn't answer. She'd been acting strange the past few days, almost as if she were avoiding me. So I drove to her house. When I arrived, I knocked on the door, but no one answered. The house was dark and the windows were shut tight. It was odd. Katie wasn't the type to just vanish. I knew she'd be home. I checked her social media, no updates, no replies. It was as if she wasn't even there. That's when I saw it. One of the most recent posts on her feed was a selfie, taken in her living room. But she wasn't alone. In the background, standing by the door, was the same woman I'd seen in my reflection. Her face was clearer now, her hollow eyes staring right at me from the screen. My stomach dropped. I couldn't explain it, but the more I looked at the photo, the more I felt like I was suffocating. The woman in the background was too still, too lifeless. It wasn't like she was just standing there. She was waiting for something. I had to find Katie. Something wasn't right, and I needed answers. I called her phone again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. Frustrated, I went to her apartment. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly, and there she was, sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. "Katie?" I called softly, but she didn't respond. It was like she couldn't hear me. Her eyes were wide open, but it felt like she was lost, trapped in some kind of trance. The TV was on, but there was no sound. I walked over to her, shaking her gently, but there was no reaction. That's when I noticed it. The reflection in the TV screen, the woman standing behind Katie. I spun around, but there was no one there. I looked back at the reflection, and the woman's face was right there, inches from Katie's. I could feel my heart racing, panic setting in. I tried to pull Katie away, but she wouldn't budge. It was like she was glued to the spot, frozen in time. And then I heard it. A whisper, faint but unmistakable. "She's here for you too." I turned and ran. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was happening, but I had to get out. I couldn't let the woman, whoever she was, get any closer. But as I reached the door, something strange happened. My phone buzzed. A new message. "It's too late. You can't run from what you've opened. She will find you, just like she found the others." I looked at the screen, my hands shaking, and I saw it. The reflection. The woman was behind me, standing in the hallway, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. I was trapped. There was nowhere left to run.
Next story.
It started as a simple game, an innocuous challenge that had been floating around my social media for weeks. Everyone was talking about it, posting their results, daring their friends to join in. It was called the Midnight Game. The rules were simple enough. At midnight, you had to light a candle, write your name on a piece of paper, and place the paper in front of you. Then, you had to knock on a door 3 times and say your name aloud. You had to do this without showing fear, no matter what happened next. The game would begin, and you would be hunted by something unseen. You had to survive until 3 a.m. when the game would end. If you survived, the game was over and you could go to sleep. People shared their stories, claiming that they had heard voices, seen strange shadows moving in the corners of their rooms, felt cold breaths on the back of their necks. Some said they had lost the game entirely, that they never truly escaped. Others claimed it was all just a hoax. It seemed harmless, a typical internet dare. I figured it was all made up for fun, but something inside me wanted to prove that it wasn't real, that I could go through with it and walk away unscathed. So that night, I prepared myself. I set my phone on silent, made sure the house was quiet, and waited until the clock struck midnight. My heart raced a little, but I brushed it off. It was just a game. Nothing was going to happen. I followed the instructions. I lit a candle, wrote my name on a piece of paper, and placed it in front of me. I stood in front of my bedroom door, knocking 3 times and saying my name aloud. The silence in the room was unnerving, but I laughed it off. Then, everything went dark. The candle flickered, and in an instant, the flame was gone. The room was bathed in complete darkness. My phone screen was black, and the house was eerily still. I froze, the silence pressing down on me. I couldn't hear a single sound, no hum of appliances, no distant car outside. It was as if the world had stopped moving. I felt a chill sweep across the room, a cold that seeped into my bones. My breath came out in visible puffs as I tried to steady myself. I glanced around the room, half expecting to see something, but there was nothing. I tried to dismiss it. Nothing had really happened, right? But then I heard it. A whisper. Soft and faint, coming from somewhere near my door. "Play with me." I could barely breathe. My body refused to move, but somehow my feet carried me towards the door. I slowly reached for the knob, and when I touched it, the coldness of it made me shiver. I opened it just a crack, peering into the dark hallway. Nothing. But I didn't feel alone. The air seemed thicker now, the shadows deeper. I stepped into the hall, the candle flickering back to life in my hand, though it barely illuminated anything around me. The feeling of being watched was unbearable. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't. I had to finish it. The whispers came again. Only this time, they weren't distant. They were right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. I ran down the hallway, the candlelight flickering wildly. My heart pounded in my chest. I had to make it to the kitchen, to the only other light in the house. I reached it and slammed the door behind me. I was shaking now, my hands trembling so badly that the candle nearly slipped from my fingers. I could still hear the whispers growing louder and more frantic. My skin crawled as the temperature dropped even more, as if the very air was suffocating me. "Come find me." The voice was no longer soft. It was an order, and it chilled me to the bone. I froze, staring into the dark corners of the kitchen, waiting for something, anything, to happen. That's when I noticed something on the wall. A shadow, a shape that hadn't been there before. It was a person, or at least it looked like a person. Tall and thin, with a face that was impossibly pale. But it was not a human face. It was wrong. The eyes were too wide, the mouth too stretched, a dark hollow hole that seemed to stare straight through me. I backed away, my mind racing, but the figure didn't move. It didn't need to. It was already there. "Come play." The whisper was in my ear now. Too close, too real. I swung the door open, but when I stepped into the living room, I was no longer alone. The room was full of them. Figures, dozens of them, emerged from the shadows. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, reflecting the dim light from my candle. Some of them were humanoid. Others were grotesque and distorted, with too many limbs or twisted faces. They stood in a circle, blocking every exit. I backed up, heart racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. "This isn't real," I muttered to myself. "This isn't real." But deep down, I knew it was. The whispers grew louder, and the figures began to move, slowly inching toward me. My legs were rooted to the floor. My body refused to move. My mind screamed for me to run, but I couldn't. Then they started to speak in unison, their voices filling my ears with a maddening chorus. "Join us." I realized then that the game had never been about surviving until 3 a.m. It wasn't about enduring whatever these things were. The game was about getting you to invite them in, to let them out of whatever prison they had been trapped in. And now, I had done it. I had opened the door, and they were free. The candle went out again, and the room plunged into total darkness. My heart raced as the whispers closed in around me, the figures circling, their breath cold on my skin. The air was thick with their presence, suffocating. I don't remember how I made it out of that room. I only know that I ran. I don't know if I really escaped, or if this is some nightmare I'm still trapped in. All I know is that the figures are still out there. I can hear them when the lights go out. Their whispers never stop, and sometimes late at night, when the wind blows just right, I can still hear them calling my name.